Okay, so use strict directive in a JavaScript. Actually, use strict directive was new in ECMAScript version 5. Purpose of this use strict directive is to indicate that the code should be executed in a strict mode. Strict mode will start from a new line, from that line where we have written a use strict. Strict mode makes it easier to write a secure JavaScript code. For example, so you see here we have declared x equal to 3.14. So this will cause an error in a strict mode because x is not declared. Deleting variable or object or a function is not allowed in a strict mode. Uh, Here we have declared the function x and we are passing the two argument p1 and the p1. This will cause an error because the duplicating parameters are not allowed in a strict mode. Then we have declared x equal to 0, 1, 0. This is octal numeric literal, which is not allowed in strict mode. Then we have declared the x is a string, but we are passing the octal escape character. This is also not allowed. Then writing to a read-only property is also not allowed. Okay, as we see here, we have declared one object and we are then defining one property on object, property x, and the configuration for the property is value would be the 0 and we'll make that property writable false. And if we try to write some value for object.x, as we see here, we are trying to change the value of object.x to 3.14. This is not allowed. Then the undeletable property cannot be deleted. As we see here, prototype property cannot be deleted. This is not allowed in a strict mode. Then variable name as a eval or arguments is not allowed because this is these are the keywords in JavaScript. Then we have this keyword in JavaScript, so this keyword in a function will return undefined in a use strict. Okay, so the next is a dynamic language. When we declare a variable, we do not need to specify the type of the variable, and later in our program we can assign different types of value to that variable. For example, in a JavaScript, we declare a variable and assign the value as a number, and after in a program we can assign the string or any other types of values in JavaScript. So this is called as a dynamic language. Also we can declare the variable as object, and by the after some time in a program we assign some new properties, or we can add new element in the array. So this is allowed in a dynamic language. Okay, then the data types in JavaScript. There are total 8 types are there in a JavaScript. So primitive are the 7 data types and the object is the 1. So here are the primitive data types: boolean type, null, undefined, number, begin, string, and symbol. These 7 are the primitive data types, and the second 8th one is the object. Okay, so the next is creating an object in a JavaScript. So first way is using object literal, means the start bracket and the end bracket, and we write the properties for object. Then using new keyword, there are two ways to create an object using new keyword. One is the user defined constructor function, and the second is built-in object constructor function. As we see here, we have defined the constructor function. person, and we are assigning the values for first name and last name members for this person class. And while creating the object, use the new keyword, and we are calling that constructor function, and the passing the values for these class members. Then the second way, by using a new keyword, is a built-in object constructor function, as we see here, creating the object using new object, and then we are assigning the properties to the created object. Then we have object creation using the object dot create. We create object using this static method create of the object. As we see here, we create the object using the existed objects. As we see here, we are creating employee object using existed object using the object dot create method. Then we have object dot assign. We create a new object. We create new object using this object dot assign method. The syntax is we pass the two objects. So using these two objects, object dot assign creates new object. As we see here, we have passed this empty object, and we have passed this another existing object. So object dot assign method will assign the properties from this object to this object, and it will return this first object. Then we have ES6 classes to create objects. This is way to declare the class, declare one constructor, and then we use new keyword to create an object from the class. So see. Okay, so the next is instance of and type of operators. So the instance of operator checks the current object and returns true. If the object is of a specified object type, the instance of operator returns a boolean value. For example, as you see here, is the employee is the instance of employee. This employee object is instance of this object, and this instance of operator will return true or false. Okay, so the next is a type of operator. We use type of operator to find the data type of a variable. This type of operator always returns a string. As we see here, nan is a number, so if we check the type of nan, it will return a number. If we check the type of array, date or null, it will return an object. If we check for function, it will return a function. If we check for undefined variable, it will return undefined. As we said here, array, date and null will return the object. So what we'll do, if we want to check that if it is a date or if it is a array variable, so we'll check using the constructor property of that variable. For example, the date variable dot constructor equal to date, and array variable dot constructor equal to array. If the variable is type of array, it will return true, and this variable is a type of date, it will return true. Okay, then the next is setters and getters in JavaScript. So this is called as accessor properties. These setters and getters are used to get or set the value of an object. So get is to define a getter method to get the property value, and the set is used to define a setter method to set the property value. So as we see here, we have declared one object, and we have assigned this first name property. This is called the data property, and then we have written two accessor property. One is a get and the second is a set. These properties starts with the get and the set keyword followed by space and then the method name. As we see here, we have declared the get name getter and the change name setter property. So, yeah. Then the second way is to define the accessor properties on a object. The second way is we have this method define property method of an object. This is the static method of an object, and the syntax for this define property method is the it takes three arguments. First is the object to write accessor property, second is the accessor property, and third is the descriptor. So the descriptor is nothing but configuration object for that property. Okay, so this is the way to define an accessor property on a object. So we have defined the student object and we have write one data property on a student object, and here you can see we have used a define property to write to get name accessor property and change name accessor property, and in a configuration we have passed an object, and in that object we have written the get property and assigned a function. And in the same way, in setting property, the first argument is a object, second argument is property, get or set property. In this case we are using the set property, and the third one is the object which is having the set property, and the value will be the function to assign a value to the first name data property. Okay, so the next is args versus arguments. Sometimes our function takes the unknown number of parameter. So in this situation we have two approach to handle the situation. First is the spread operator. We use the spread operator and takes the parameters, and the second approach is we don't write anything in a function parameter, but in a function body we access the arguments keyword. So this will give us the parameters as an array like object. As we see here, this is the args approach. So we'll collect all the parameters in a args array. If we try to log this, it will print the array of parameters. And the second way is we don't write anything in a parameters, but in a function body we can access the arguments of 0, arguments of 1 till the arguments finishes. Then if we try to log this arguments dot length, it will give us the number of arguments passed to that function, and the function dot length will tell us that how much arguments the function will take. So you see here is the example. We have written this func function and taking the a as an argument, and we are accessing the arguments of 0 and we are assigning the value 99. This is updating the argument 0, and then we try to log the console.log a, which is passed parameter. And when we try to call this function and pass the 10 as a value, actually this argument stop 0 will change the value of this parameter a. So when we try to log this a, it will print the 99 because we have modified this parameter using the arguments of 0, which is also pointing to parameter a. Okay, then we have conversion. Conversion means implicit conversion of values from one data type to another data type, such as a number to string. So we see here example that high string plus 2, it will output as a hi2 because 2 is yet converted to a string. Then if we try to coerce this array operator, so this will get converted to a string comma separated values, as we see here. If we try to convert this to a string, it will convert as an empty string, and if we try to convert the array with values, it will convert to a string as a comma separated elements. Then if we try to convert this object to a string, it will convert as this string. Start of square bracket, then object space object, and the end square bracket. Object will start with capital O. Okay, so the next is a prototype property. So the prototype is a property and its value is an object. Prototype property is associated with every function and object in a JavaScript. The function's prototype property is accessible and we can modify its value, but object's prototype property is not visible and hence we cannot access it and we cannot modify it. As we see here, we have declared one constructor function student, and for this name property we are assigning the value. Then in next statement we have added the age property to the student's constructor function's prototype property. We are assigning 30 value. So as we see here, we have added age property to the prototype of the student constructor function. Then we are creating the object using new keyword, the student. So when we try to log the student dot age, it will give us a 30, though we have written it in a prototype and not in a constructor functions body. So when we create an object, the underscore proto underscore property gets added to the object. This property points to a constructor function's prototype property. It means when we access underscore proto underscore property, it will return prototype property of a constructor function. We can use prototype property to find the properties and methods of an object, and we can implement inheritance in JavaScript using prototype property. Okay, then the next is a property chain. So the JavaScript engine check that if given property or method is attached to object or not. If it found in an object property, it will return the value. If doesn't find in a object properties, it goes to the underscore proto underscore property of object and check there if this required property or method is found in that object. If found, it returns value. So this proto property actually points to the parent's prototype property. So the required method or required property doesn't find in proto object. JavaScript engine goes to the prototype property of a parent and check there if that property or method is found, it will return the value, and if that property or method doesn't find in the prototype property of a parent, it will goes till the object function, because everything is derived from object function in JavaScript. And lastly, if the property doesn't find in prototype property of object function, it will return null, and this is called as a prototype chain in JavaScript. Okay, for example, suppose we have a D object which is created using the class C. The class C is extends to class B, and the class B is suppose extend to the class A. So in this situation, when we try to find any property or method, JavaScript engine will check for that properties in properties of object D. If they are found, it will return. If not found, it will goes to proto object of the object D. If it finds there, it will return, or else it will go to prototype property of a class C. If it's find there, it will return, else it will goes to the prototype property of class B. If find, it will return. If not, it will go to the prototype property of A, and in this way it will goes till the object functions prototype property. If the required property is found in object functions prototype, it will return, else it will return null. So this is called prototype chain in a JavaScript. Okay, then we'll see the inheritance in JavaScript using the prototype property. This is also called prototypal inheritance or the behavioral delegation. So the inheritance is an important concept when we work with the objects. We can reuse the functionality in inheritance. In inheritance, methods from base class gets copied to the child class. In JavaScript, inheritance is supported by the prototype property, as we said earlier. This is also called as a prototypal inheritance or behavioral delegation. We'll see the example here. Okay, so we have written one base class which is taking the f name and the l name. Base class person, which is taking the f name and l name as argument, and we are assigning these parameters to our class properties name and the l name. So then we have added one get name method to the prototype property of a person class, as you see here, person dot prototype dot get name method, and will return the name and the name property. Then we have a derived class. We have named it as a student. We are taking 3 arguments for student, name, l name, and the school. And in the derived class, we have called this person dot call method, and we are passing the object and the comma separated argument to this call function. So this will give the call to the our base class, and we are passing the required arguments here. Then we have assigned object of the parent class to our prototype property of a child class. Then we are pointing our child class constructor to our child class, as we see here, student dot prototype dot constructor equal to student. And then we have created object, as you see here, let the student equal to new student, and we are passing the f name, l name, and the school. So these are actually a 7-step to work with the inheritance in a JavaScript. So we'll see these 7 steps one by one in detail. Okay, so the 7 steps to work with a prototypal inheritance in JavaScript. First is declare a base class. So as we see here, we have written this base class. Then attach methods to the prototype property of a person, that is a base class. So the children of the base class can use them. As we see here, we have attached these methods to a prototype property of a base class. Then declare a child class, as we have declared the student as a child class here. Then any child give call to a parent class. It's similar to a super method in other languages. As you see here, we have given the call to the person constructor function in this way in the student functions body. Then point the prototype dot constructor property to the child. Sorry, we forgot about this fifth method. So the point the prototype of a student to a person class by creating object of person. As we see here, we're pointing the student's prototype to an object which is created using by the parent class. Then the sixth step is to point the child's prototype dot constructor to its own constructor function. As we see here, we have pointed this prototype student dot prototype dot constructor to a student itself. And the seventh is the creating object, as we see here. And now we can access the methods from base class also, like student dot get name will return this John and Joe to us. This is called prototypal inheritance in a JavaScript. Okay, then the next is has own property method. The has own property method returns a boolean indicator whether the object has the specified property as its own data property and not inherited from a parent. So it will return true if the property is its own, and it will return false if it is not their own property and inherited from the parent.